flammable cooking products are more efficient than it previously concluded. But the industry group says this hasn't led the Energy Department to change its rule proposals. The group says the rules are too strict and would affect the quality of products that can be produced. It also says the small savings are not worth the loss of convenience to consumers. The Energy Department says the rules would go into effect in 2027 and save money while curbing greenhouse gas emissions. The Energy Secretary has pushed back on criticism, saying the department is required to put forward the rules due to energy efficiency laws. Did Chinese officials influence U.S. energy policy? A new report shows the head of the Energy Department held multiple conversations with the Chinese regime's top energy official. That was just days before the administration's historic release from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. The administration released 50 million barrels of oil from the reserve in 2021 to counter high gas prices. More has been released since then. A portion of the oil was purchased by Chinese state-run energy companies. The White House has said it had no choice since the oil was sold to the highest bidder. Talks between U.S. Energy Secretary Jennifer Granholm and senior Chinese Communist Party official Zhang Jianhua were not revealed publicly. Americans for Public Trust discovered the meeting by obtaining internal Energy Department calendars and sharing them with Fox News. The Energy Department now says the meeting was part of a combating climate change, but did not say specifically what was discussed. Republican leaders have criticized the oil releases, saying it weakened national security and helped foreign adversaries. Republicans want answers from the Biden administration on alleged Chinese malware attacks. The attacks reportedly targeted key government officials and utility companies, including those serving U.S. military installations. The lawmakers sent a letter yesterday to Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin and NSA Cybersecurity Director Rob Joyce. They want to know the extent of the alleged hacks, how long the Biden administration has been aware of them, and what steps are being taken to address the situation. They say the increase in CCP attacks on U.S. bases and military infrastructure are matched by their increasingly aggressive behavior in the Taiwan Strait and other international waters. The lawmakers added that CCP aggression in the cyber domain must be met with a firm, resolute, and measured response from the making him the first governor in the nation to take the step. Stitt says the move is to ensure the true definition of the word woman and to protect the safety, dignity, and sanctity of women across the state. The Wisconsin Supreme Court became a liberal majority court for the first time in 15 years. One of their first acts was to fire the director of state courts. He served in the position for 6 years. Chief Justice Annette Ziegler denounced her colleague's act. Called their conduct a raw exercise of power that was unprecedented and dangerous. She wrote, "This type of action has never occurred simply because a new justice secures a new majority, whether liberal or conservative." She says she was not made aware of any issue that would merit firing. The termination was announced in a short letter informing State Courts Director Randy Koschnick his role would end that same day. Without specifying a reason, the Director of State Courts is responsible for the overall management of the court system. Koschnick was out of town at the time of his firing. He told local media his staff was told to box up his items. He says he is politically conservative but has not made political statements or taken political action during his time on the job. He said he might consider filing a lawsuit. A federal judge in Connecticut has ruled on the state's 2013 gun control law. A gun rights group challenged a ban on so-called assault weapons. The law was enacted shortly after the Sandy Hook shooting in 2012, where 26 were killed with an AR-15 and other weapons. The National Association for Gun Rights said the ban violated the Second Amendment right to bear arms for self-defense. The judge argued that certain assault weapons with high-capacity magazines weren't commonly used for self-defense and rejected a request to block the law. The Gun Rights Association called the ruling an outrageous slap in the face to law-abiding gun owners and the Constitution alike. The group vowed to appeal the ruling. The Biden administration has reportedly stripped funding for hunting and archery courses in schools. NTD's Daniel Monahan has more on the threat to courses many school officials see as a significant academic motivator.
The of Education says the move to withdraw funding has its roots in a new law called the Bipartisan Safer Communities Act, which was signed into law by President Biden in June of 2022. The law prohibits the use of education funding for providing anyone with a dangerous weapon. It was passed in the wake of the Uvalde, Texas school shooting. Several Democrats, like Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy and North Carolina Republican Senator Thom Tillis, sponsored the legislation. Both Tillis and Republican Texas Senator John Cornyn called the interpretation of the law botched and wrote a letter to the Department of Education stating their interpretation goes against the law's intent. They say using the law to shift critical educational and enrichment resources away from archery and hunter education classes was never its intent. Representative Mark Green is fighting the move. He introduced the Protecting Hunting Heritage and Education Act this week, saying this about the Biden administration's move: letting Washington bureaucrats sitting in a half-empty, air-conditioned building in the swamp make arbitrary decisions about what kids in Tennessee should and should not learn is the antithesis of federalism, adding that archery and other shooting sports are valuable to our children. That's something the president of the National Archery in the Schools program, Tommy Floyd, agrees with. He says there are countless examples that the programs keep students involved in schools while contributing to other academic endeavors. The official says data shows that nearly 60% of student archers are engaged in school. He believes such school programs keep kids connected, and that connected kids are much easier to reach. Daniel Monahan, NTD News.
Deep-seated corruption.
The news cycle often feels like it moves at the speed of light, but as we reflect on much of what has taken place since 2016, the groundless Russia collusion investigation, 2 impeachment attempts, and now high-ranking officials orchestrating a letter suggesting the Hunter Biden laptop story was Russian disinformation, it raises more questions. What's happening in our beloved country?
With an election on the horizon, inflation out of control, and China's constant provocation, is this really what voters want our elected officials to focus on?
Well, we're not a serious country anymore when you think about it. This is all bread and circuses for the masses. We have serious problems. Think about our foreign policy problems. Think about our military weakness. Think about the border crisis, the humanitarian crisis. If you feel very strongly about the immigrants coming to this country that should be taken care of, that's a strain on our budget. But we're not a serious country when all we're talking about here is indicting Trump. It's the mark of really, I hate to say it, but a dissolute nation that has lost its bearings. It's very unprincipled.
I don't know how these individuals feel that they're doing a great job by letting people, like let's say a knife point robbery. He thinks that's a minor offense. Low-level burglaries, he calls them. If somebody breaks into your house, is that a low-level crime? Commercial burglaries are through the roof here. Stores now our drug chains are locking everything up constantly because of the theft. It's just unbelievable. Now we're trying to get back to sanity in New York City, but it's a tough road when you're going to have DAs like Alvin Bragg kind of letting it, resisting arrest. He even says he's not going to prosecute. Can you believe that?
New York City police are searching for
Robberies in Manhattan. Brazen robbers deliberately crashing into an SUV.
Right now, we may have set on a path of convicting people using an ambiguous interpretation of legal statute to achieve political goals.
They have started to go down a very, very dangerous road.
But how far are we from the cautionary tales history has left us to reflect upon? What will happen when we can't hold ourselves up to the standards of the rule of law?
Stalin, who was one of the worst genocidal maniacs in history, up to 20 million people killed under his reign. He takes somebody who is a threat to him, and rather than necessarily just taking them out back and shooting them, they would invent charges against somebody and convict them of that, and then unfortunately oftentimes followed by quick sentences, often of execution. And you see the same thing in Maoist China. You see the same thing in any number of banana republics, Cuba, Central America. It's a common refrain where whatever side is in power decides that they are going to either discredit or maybe even eliminate their political opponents through law enforcement and through the judiciary. And we're in the early stages of that happening right now. But we see many, many occasions right now where federal law enforcement targeting people based on politics. It's an extremely dangerous time.
Jesse, is there a specific point in our history, modern or otherwise, that you kind of feel as though we started to diverge from those ideals?
Oh, it's really interesting to talk about this, how we kind of began the process of losing our constitutional republic given to us by our founders. And historians can probably look at everything from the reforms that were put in place after the Civil War that were very heavy-handed. They can look at security measures that came in place during the Cold War. They can certainly look, and where I would peg it in modern times is our fear of terrorism after September 11th and the rise of bills like the Patriot Act. I remember the first time I heard about the new government agency that was going to come in place after September 11th, and it was to be called the Department of Homeland Security. And I just kind of shrugged a little bit, and my hair stood on end because, gosh, that sounds a lot like the Committee for State Security. And the Committee for State Security in Russian is KGB.
File Recovery and Data Recovery and File Manager have up to 1.5 million users. Both are from the same developer and feature similar malicious behaviors.
First, on the store, they were showing 1.5 million installations, but no reviews at all, which is weird because usually when users use an application, they like to give review, and there is a proportion of the number of installation that we find in the reviews. And this one, no reviews at all. So we think there were most fake installation to lure user into thinking the applications are legitimate and safe.
According to Prodeo, the apps are programmed to launch without users' interaction and to silently exfiltrate sensitive users' data towards various malicious servers based in China. Stolen data include users' contact lists and all connected accounts such as email, social networks, pictures, audio and video contents, real-time user location, network provider, and more.
Finally, there was another behavior, is that once installed the applications, they hide their icons. So users install them, maybe they forget about them. Usually we have on a personal or on a corporate mobile device more than hundreds of applications installed. And so they just hide their icon from the main page to make sure people forget about them and make it harder to delete, because you have to go in the system settings in the application list to delete them.
And to create these realistic fakes, criminals only need to access material like photos, audio, and video. Robert says if someone gets into your private photos in your iCloud, that gives all the sampling, all the technology to make hyper-realistic fakes. He added that deepfakes might even affect the upcoming presidential election due to fake videos of candidates.
Coming up, a second-tier English soccer
by any means, so it could be used to their advantage. The alleged conduct also represents a violation of the solemn obligation of members of our military to defend our country, to safeguard our secrets, and to protect their fellow service members.
The indictment alleges that Zhao received bribes from a Chinese intelligence officer in exchange for disclosing non-public sensitive U.S. military information.
In addition, we charge that Mr. Zhao took photographs of electrical diagrams and blueprints for a radar system located at a U.S. military base in Okinawa, Japan. We also allege that Mr. Zhao transmitted to the intelligence officer working for the People's Republic of China
details about the Navy's operational security, including photographs and videos of the interior of naval bases located at Ventura and at San Clemente Island, which is the Navy's only live-fire facility used for testing military equipment and operations.
In exchange for the information Zhao provided, he was paid about $14,800. This reportedly began in August 2021 and continued through at least May 2023. If he is convicted, Zhao would face up to 20 years in federal prison. And in a separate case, 22-year-old U.S. Navy sailor Jin Chao Wei, or Patrick Wei, was also arrested Wednesday for espionage charges. He was stationed at Naval Base San Diego.
According to our indictment, Wei provided China with photographs of military hardware, including guns, vehicles, and planes. He delivered information about U.S. Marines involved in an upcoming international maritime warfare exercise, and he sold scores of technical and mechanical manuals related to the operation and power structures of amphibious assault ships. Some of the manuals contained information deemed quote-unquote critical technology by the U.S. Navy.
In both cases, the Chinese intelligence officer directed the Navy sailors to hide their conspiracy and destroy evidence of the schemes.
A mobile security company found a spy,
which seems a tall order in a nation as divided as we appear to be.
We need other people that are lifelong blue dog, dyed-in-the-wool, Union Democrats that love this country, that love America, and they might, differ from us on a few policy positions here and there. They love this country and what it stands for, and they abhor the idea of political prosecutions. We need those people to stand with us. And we can have plenty of differences down the road after we fight this giant, this biggest threat that America has confronted in 2.5 centuries. We can go back to our more petty disagreements after that. But right now, all freedom-loving Americans must stand together. Otherwise, in the words of Benjamin Franklin, we shall surely hang separately.